Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is October 22nd, 2018. Time is approximately 9:35 p.m. I'm calling this BOA meeting to order. I'm going to go through and read the agenda, and then I'll ask for a motion from the board. Second item will be the approval of the actual agenda. We have one item under old business, the Board of Adjustment meeting minutes from the August 27th meeting. And we have two items under new business. Both are quasi-judicial. Number 2018-44 is an application by Amy Anderson and Jacob Baird. The second one, B, Resolution 2018-43, an application by D.V. Temple, followed by meeting adjournment. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Hersom, second by Commissioner Glanzer. Any further discussion on the agenda from the dais? Hearing none. Any from the public? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, unanimous. First item is the old business, October 27th Board of Adjustment meeting minutes. I trust you all had the opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any comments? Anybody like to offer a motion of acceptance of the meeting minutes?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Commissioner Hersom seconds the motion. Any further discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none. Any from the public? Hearing none likewise. All those in favor of acceptance of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, unanimous. New business, item A, quasi-judicial proceeding, 2018-44. I need my cheat sheet. Somebody got one? All right, I've got it. Please pardon the administrative monotony of reading through this item specifically, but we do it for a purpose, we do it for reasons, so just bear with me as I go through that. The quasi-judicial meeting procedure. This procedure is to ensure that the applicant provides a complete presentation of their request prior to any testimony being provided by the staff. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. This procedure tonight will follow these steps. Number one, first we'll hear from the applicant. Second, the applicant will then be subject to cross-examination. Third, the staff will enter the staff report into the record and answer any questions, followed by the applicant having the opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony against the applicant. The floor will then be open to public comment, limited to 5 minutes each. Members of the staff will have, members of the public rather, will have an opportunity to question the applicant or the staff. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to make a closing argument after that. And the last item will be the public hearing will be closed, and the commission itself, or the board, will enter into deliberations. At this time, we're going to go ahead and administer the oath. Anybody who is going to be giving any kind of testimony needs to rise or raise their right hand as the clerk reads the oath. Please, everyone, raise your right hands.
And starting here, would you please state your name for the record?
Anthony Brown, Jacob Berry.
Wait a second. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
You have been duly sworn. Dr. Christian.
Just to clarify, were any of you planning on speaking? In the event that you fall into the opportunity that you want to speak, we can administer the oath a second time, okay? All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for administering the oath. We have 43 on the agenda after 44. Does that matter? Okay, let me reorder my... First applicant is the application by Amy Anderson. Mr. Attorney, would you like to read the well, we can do that afterwards, right? We do that at the end?
Either way is fine, however you'd like to.
Okay, just read it now.
I'm happy to do so.
And we're doing 2018-44.
Yes, sir. This is resolution number 2018-44, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, considering an application for a special exception within a residential single-family RSF2 zoning district, as authorized under Section 4.2.38-.2 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations to allow the keeping of small livestock, primarily as pets, on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-44 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jacob, are you appearing as the applicant? Okay, come on up.
Hello, thank you for listening to me today. I recently, along with my partner, moved into Newberry, and not too long after that, it was approximately, I believe, 2 months, we decided to get the goats. They're 4 dwarf goats. To give a little background, we did a little bit of research, and I don't know how much of the paperwork you actually have, but we did it on kind of a hunch as a way of being able to help her with her anxiety and depression, as well as some other stuff that's undiagnosed at this point in time. And so it was kind of a hunch. We got them, set them up a pen, and then got way better results than I was expecting, than she was expecting. She was daily going outside, taking care of these animals, was becoming more communicative with me, and overall brighter in general. And then it was a couple months after that we got a card at our door from code enforcement. And they said the following day, tried to contact them, had no luck at that point in time, but called, finally got in contact with someone, and they said that we would have to get rid of them. We followed up, did a little bit more research, and now we're at this point. And as far as I can say for them themselves, they're small, quiet animals. There's no smell to be heard of. They're not used for anything other than essentially pets, and as a sort of medical therapy, I guess you could say. I guess if you have any questions for me, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Baird. You don't have any time limit here, but I think you've got your point across, so well done. I admire you for coming up and taking this on yourself. If you have no further comments or anything, we can move to the cross-examination portion.
Okay.
But I'm not hearing any at this point.
Do we have staff report on this, or is that?
It's coming up.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, we'll just have a seat for a second. We'll have staff come up and enter their report. Now that's step 3. And once they're up, you'll be able to come back up and rebut anything that they have said or add any other comment. You'll have a closing comment opportunity as well. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this item, as you know, is to do with the dwarf goats. And in this location, these kinds of goats, because they're miniature, they're allowed in our code under the agriculture district, agriculture provision for urban agriculture. This is zoned RSF2, which is minimum 10,000 square foot lots. The applicant, their property is .48 acres, so it's over the 20,000 minimum square foot lot that you are required to have in order to have these small livestock. And the code actually provides for the small livestock to be kept primarily as pets, and these are the miniature, the dwarf goats, the pygmy, and not just goats, but small livestock, so it could be any type of animal typically used for livestock, but there's just small. We have a few pictures of those, but the location being on Northwest First Avenue, it's just a little bit to the west of Northwest 258th Street on the north side of Northwest First Avenue. This is a kind of a site plan drawing that the applicant put together to help you know, kind of how the property sits, where the building is, and you see that the area that's got the strange shape there is the two pens that are put together. There's about, I'd say about 1,200 square feet max, I think. 1,200 square feet in those pens, and that's where the animals are kept. And the applicant, Ms. Anderson, goes out and takes care of them, cleans their pens daily. And this also shows you, I think the applicant could also use these if he'd like to explain some of these things. These are things that he provided that are in your packet for his application. And the green area is showing where there's brush and trees and I guess vegetation on adjacent properties. And then you see the outlines of the buildings and adjacent property. You can also see where the pens are. And this is, the next couple of pictures show you the goats. These are small, they're like this tall, you know, they're little, but they're like a good-sized dog. I mean, so this is some of the area. The thatched area that you see on the left is the top of the of an area that's like a shelter for them. And so it's a little bit hard to see on that, but you can see the thatch on the bottom and then the thatch on the top, where it's on top of that shelter. And then this is the area where their pen and their little shelter there where they're running around. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. The staff recommendation is for approval, and the Planning and Zoning Board also recommended approval of the application with a few conditions that are in your packet that just state that the pens will be cleaned daily in case there were to be any kind of odor, and then also that there would be, through attrition, there would eventually just be the two goats. So as they got older, because this is a family, these are 4 grandma, mom, kids, for the goats. So they took them all as a family together, but as the older ones go, then they will have be allowed a maximum of 2 goats if you were to approve this. And then the pens are designated on the site plan, and that would be part of the resolution if you were to approve it as well. So they'd be held to that location and for cleaning them and the number of goats. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you. And we do enter this staff report and recommendation into the record.
Okay, Chair recognizes Commissioner Glanzer.
I just had one question. Do they make noise, and if they do, have the neighbors been notified that there might be goats allowed next door to them?
The application requires that we notify all the property owners within 400 feet. So that property, everyone has gotten notice around there. The noise, we haven't, I think Jacob has some information about the noise itself that he researched and did some experiments himself, but also I think the initial concern was somebody was complaining about the noise. We haven't had anything else, any other concerns, and everybody has been notified in that 400 feet. But, and I heard maybe one say a little noise. It's not like you think of on YouTube when they have those larger goats and the screaming, you know, how you send funny videos around showing this. This is totally different. So maybe the applicant could explain a little bit more about that for you.
Before you leave, does anybody on the Commissioner Farnsworth?
We also have the chickens in the same area too.
Yes, sir.
Is what I'm seeing?
They are allowed by right in the district, and that's a separate, it's not permitted through this process. It's allowed by right in any of those districts there. You can have a maximum of 4. So but under this special exception, you're considering the goats.
Any other further questions from the board before we allow or from the board to the staff before we allow the applicant to come back up? Seeing none, if you guys want to switch again.
Okay, so...
Mr. Barrett, just to let you know, we're at this point, you can kind of rebut anything that she said. You can do kind of a closing argument. We'll kind of ask you a couple more questions if needed.
Okay. As far as their noise, we actually went about 20 to 30 feet away from their pen and actually got an app on the phone to actually test how loud they were, just because they're relatively quiet, but they do make noise. They make a baaing noise. And the max that we got to was like 40 decibels, and I'm not even 100% sure that was them versus the park that's out back, but that was the max that we got just in general. Plus, since they're prey animals at nighttime, they go into their hut, they don't make any noise. You hear dogs barking at night louder than them. So, as far as the chickens go, the primary reason we keep them in the same pen is they serve as a form of pest control as well. So essentially, it's kind of a symbiotic system. So, like she said, they're no bigger than, say, a large breed dog, basically. The biggest one is right there, and that's the grandmother, and she's just heavy because she's big. Those areas, like that, are grass, which should provide from what I've been able to tell, a sound barrier, because I haven't gotten any complaints directly from either of our adjacent neighbors. And if you have any questions, I can answer them.
Okay. Does anybody from the public have any comments or questions? All right. Hearing none. Commissioner Hersom.
Since the Planning and Zoning Board did grandfather in the 4, but with the attrition, are there any male goats on the premises?
No, absolutely
Okay.
not. They're all female. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very good. If you just want to have a seat real quick, we'll kind of do our thing.
Okay.
All right. Excuse me. Okay, the board at this point can go through its deliberative process. Or does anybody else have any kind of questions or comments that they want to make that they've not addressed yet? I think my biggest concern was making sure that the neighbors haven't complained. And Wendy, is it my understanding that he got a code violation because he did not have the exception in place? So this is kind of addressing putting an exception in place. Should we feel favorably?
My understanding is that there was a complaint, a noise complaint that was called into codes enforcement, and our codes enforcement officer went to the site and checked to see what was going on, and then said, oh, you need to have, in order to do this, to have your livestock, your small animals, you have to go through the special exception process. And that's why they've gone through this process, and why they've made sure that, like you say, we have to make sure we notify all the property owners and have that opportunity.
The person who called that in has not come forward?
No,
again?
they have been notified as one of the property owners within that area, but we haven't heard any other feedback on that.
Okay. Chair recognizes Commissioner Glanzer.
If we do get another noise complaint, that could be addressed by code enforcement, I guess, or how would we stop it? I mean, if they didn't come forward and they're still making the same noises, and we give a special exception and they still make noise, what's the ramification?
I'm like, go ahead.
I would just say that we have certain requirements for noise, if we're going to look at what's a nuisance and what constitutes noise violations in the sense of the county's noise ordinance. But I know we've dealt with this on many other properties for other kinds of things, and
Okay. I'll defer over to the city attorney.
yeah.
It would be my understanding that this process in notifying the neighbors is the opportunity for the neighbor to come forward. I suppose they could come forward later, but our edification back to them was, hey, they went through the process, people were notified, etc. But tell me if I'm wrong, or
No,
if you have
you're
anything
exactly
else.
right. They're on notice that this is an ongoing process, and so tonight is their opportunity to be here and voice their concerns. The comment was exactly correct, that our noise ordinance, which is very extensive, is also available to us. So if there is problems with the bleeding of the goats such that it is beyond our noise ordinance, then we can enforce it. There's two ways we can enforce our noise ordinance, which is again very detailed, through the plainly audible standard, which has been ruled by our Supreme Court to be enforceable. So that's one way that it could be enforced, and the other is through a decibel meter. The sheriff's office has 2 decibel meters. They have training in how to operate the decibel meters. So if it was something that was ongoing and creating a problem, then we could address it in that way.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Mayor Marlowe.
I just wanted to say that at the P&Z, nobody showed up there to complain. So whoever made the initial, and it was my understanding that the initial request was more of a visual. They looked over the fence and they saw the neighbors, or that it was unclear. So we've never, to my knowledge, gotten anything specific about that. But nobody came to the P&Z. Nobody came tonight. And I think that this got kicked for a couple of weeks, so there was ample time for people to come and voice their concerns.
Fair enough. Does anybody at the board wish to offer a motion toward speaking to Resolution 2018-44 at this point?
You doing it or me? I move to approve Resolution 2018-44 as written. 44?
We have a motion offered on the floor,
Second?
and I hear a second. Commissioner Coleman's motion, Commissioner Hersom second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of granting the exception, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Hearing none, the ayes have it unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Bear. Take care of your animals. Don't be a nuisance. We'll have you back here. Second item on the agenda tonight is arguably the bigger of the two, Resolution 2018-43. Just quickly, the applicant will have an opportunity to come forward. They'll be subject to cross-examination. Staff will enter its report. The opportunity will be then afforded to the applicant for any rebuttal of the staff testimony. Floor will be open to public comment. Then the applicant will have an opportunity for closing arguments, and then the board will enter into its deliberation of whether or not to grant the exception. Mr. Attorney, at this time, do you mind reading the resolution number 2018-43 by title only?
I'm happy to do so. This is Resolution 2018-43, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, considering an application for a special exception within an agricultural A zoning district as authorized under Section 4.4.5.17 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations to permit the location of a house of worship on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, repealing resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-43 as read by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Would the applicant please come forward? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Jay Brown, engineer from Gainesville, Jay Brown Professional Group, and I'm happy to be here tonight representing...
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. I got a little bit of feedback. Okay. Again, my name is Jay Brown, an engineer from Gainesville, with Jay Brown Professional Group. I'm representing the Devi Temple of Florida, and we've been kind of patiently waiting our turn tonight, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here. As you may recall, we were presented before the Planning and Zoning Board on October 1st, and we were granted approval of our petition, which generally consists of a new place of worship on 21.6 acres in Newberry, south of here on 2741. And I believe you all saw the presentation at that time, and I won't go into a bunch of detail on it, but I would like to at least address some of the issues that were discussed, a couple of issues that were discussed at that plan board meeting, and some of the things that you asked us to accomplish, which I think is appropriate to bring up now. So at that meeting, there was discussion about whether or not we should provide a buffer, and the motion that was made at the Planning and Zoning Board asked us to provide a buffer on the north and the east property lines. And it was agreed that the buffer could be planted pines. Can you all hear me okay, or it's just a lot of feedback? Or?
I'm trying to see if we can get that map on the screen for them.
Oh, okay.
So these guys can see it. They have a map in front of them, but just so everybody's clear. There we go.
Oh, okay, okay. So yes, this is a picture of the project, of our overall site plan that we have. And what was requested of us is that we add a buffer along the north property line, which is at the top of the page there, and then on the right side of the page on the east property line. And what we did is we based on the recommendation and the condition that was placed on us at the Planning and Zoning Board, we added those buffers, and it actually required us to redesign the stormwater basins a little bit there that you see up on the screen, and because we had to move them a little further to the south so we could provide that buffer on the north property line. And the same thing on the east property line. So we revised those plans, added the buffers, and then forwarded them to the city staff. And so that we did address the condition of that, and so it is the current plan that is before the city staff now includes the new buffers that you all requested. In addition, there was a comment that was made, and you asked us to investigate, or at least to discuss with the FDOT, potentially an issue that was raised by one of the members of the public at that meeting about traffic associated with Champions Park. So based on that request, I contacted the DOT, the reviewers of our petition, and they're currently still in review of our application for our DOT driveway connection permit. They agreed. I presented the case that the Champions Park driveway, which is significantly further to the north, and their turn lane there would have no effect on Devi Temple, nor would our traffic have any effect on the Champions Park, and the DOT agreed with us. So it is 2,200 linear feet, so almost a half a mile from the turn where you turn right if you're coming southbound and you go to Champions Park to our driveway. So it's pretty clear that there's no kind of connection between the two. So I just wanted to let you know that we did bring that up to the DOT. We have some email communication. I believe we forwarded that to city staff. They have since provided us with comments on our connection. And they were real kind of simple comments. I think they wanted us to add a stop bar that we had left off on one of our plans or something. There was 2 or 3 comments, but none of them had anything to do with Champions Park or turn lanes or anything that were required for that. So we expect the permit to be issued any time. So that's really just the update on the status of listening to the Planning and Zoning Board commentary and making sure that we followed up with the DOT and had that discussion, which was asked of us. Other than that, don't have a lot more to add. I mean, we've been working with your staff, who's been fantastic. And as you can see, the folks are very interested. They really, would like to get started with this project, and we would just respectfully request your all's approval this evening. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, anybody have any questions? I'm sorry. Chair recognizes Commissioner Farnsworth.
I'm guessing they'll be using well water and sewer for the facility?
Septic sewer, yes,
Okay.
and a well That's correct.
And how many people will be using that facility?
Well, the auditorium of the Phase 1 building, which is about the 3,200 square foot building that we're proposing, which you can see, it's kind of on the bottom of the screen there. The bigger building shown there is the future temple, which is not being proposed with Phase 1.
I think your remote has a laser.
Okay. Yeah, usually it doesn't,
Oh.
it doesn't show up.
Here's the Phase 1.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
that's correct. And that's the future temple building, correct. Thank you. But anyway, for the Phase 1 facility, it has a capacity of 240 in the main assembly area. So you asked the question of, what is the capacity of that?
And what
So,
about phase 2?
well, that building hasn't been final designed yet, but it would have substantially more capacity, probably. Typically a building of that size will involve more than just the assembly area. It might have classrooms and meeting rooms and offices and different spaces like that. So I would anticipate a capacity of maybe 400 to 500 maybe tops in a building the size of what's being proposed for the future temple.
Will the facility be used continuously, or is it just a certain period of time during the week, or?
They generally anticipate using it maybe one evening during the week where they might have a service, and then on the weekend. So be very similar to what you might find with most any house of worship church facility.
And is anybody going to be living there permanently?
Yes, they do plan for a Hindu priest to be living there permanently on the property, yes. And I'm not sure if initially it'll be permanently or whatever, but they do want to provide housing for a single priest for their facility. And it is part of our plan. We show a location for that. But it's just nothing more than a mobile home.
up there? 'Cause I can show it to you.
No, I see. Thanks.
It's right there. Yep, right there.
My only concern is whether you have adequate drainage for the septic, and whether it will, the possibility of contamination of the aquifer. Has that been addressed?
We would have to meet all the state standards and the Alachua County Health Department standards in order to be issued a septic tank permit. And in order to receive that permit, we would have the presumption of not contaminating the aquifer. I mean, there's not much more that we would do except for abide by all the criteria. But we definitely have to get that permitted, that site permitted. And there'll be soil testing associated with that. It'll be sized appropriately for the loading and that sort of thing.
Chair recognizes Ms. Glanzer.
I welcome the diversity of this congregation to our community, and I wondered if we could make a contingent upon getting an Indian restaurant.
Yeah.
But welcome to Newberry. Okay, thank you.
I'm sure they won't complain about it if it happens. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else for your opening? Otherwise, we'll move on to staff. Okay. Ms. Wendy, you tackling this one again, I guess? Okay. So this staff will enter its report. We'll have an opportunity to ask staff questions, and then the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut anything from the staff. Ms. Windsor? That's never happened before, right? Ms. Kinzer?
That's a good one. All right, the staff, we enter this, the staff report that you have as part of the record, along with the staff recommendation and Planning and Zoning Board recommendation. The application being for a house of worship, which is a use that's allowed by special exception in the agriculture district. It's a use that it doesn't allow a school by right, but this is specifically for the house of worship. And then if they were to get want to do a school at any time in the future, and the reason we're bringing this up is just because many people have asked, well, is this similar to other applications in the past that had a church or a school and that kind of thing? So this is really for the house of worship, and then if they were to ever want to do a school, they would come back before you for another special exception request. The specific code sections having to do with the agriculture district and allowing it as a house of worship. Also, there are minimum off-street parking requirements and certain kinds of issues that are addressed in our code, and those things have been addressed through the applicant's site plan and their addressing of the different findings of fact for the application. This is an aerial map that shows you the location of the property, that it's on the east side of State Road 45 across and south of Champions Park. And looking at the site plan, the overall plan, as the applicant described, showing that they have the first phase, which is your 3,250 square feet of a multi-purpose building, and then a future phase that's going to have this larger 15,000 square foot temple building for other types of uses, classrooms and that kind of thing. And the current phase, it really takes up about 1.5 acres of the entire 21 plus acre site, and it provides for the single family mobile home that's going to be for the priest's residence, and then has the parking and drainage and that kind of thing. This is the closer view into the site plan showing where the locations of those things are, and that there are 78 proposed parking spaces at this time, with 2 of them being for disabled people. The next application, the application itself addresses a few of these different kinds of issues, and then the applicant has actually shown how their development in their application, you'll see that where they went through and addressed all the conditions and findings, bases for the recommendation for approval. Specifically looking at the first phase being on well and septic, and that if they're, when they go to something larger, that they would be looking at the hooking up to central water or other kind of provision, because you have to be able to have enough for the fire flow, looking at that. But there's several different conditions that are placed on this application to ensure that the water and sewer issue is addressed, so that in the event that there are in the future an expansion in this future phase and in multiple additional people, then they will have to look at that into connecting the central water and sewer. So it does require that within, if the property ever, if the city were to ever bring the water and sewer within 800 feet of that property, they would be required to connect. So, and then another condition is about the buffering, which this next site plan just shows you that the applicant is taking the concerns of the Planning and Zoning Board to heart, and as you heard, that they've already talked to FDOT, and you can see already are addressing the buffers and showing them on the plan. There are notes already provided on the north and the east, as well as looking at the southern boundary. At least if the pines are harvested, they will provide a buffer there as well. So that's it. If you have any questions, we can go over any of those, or I'm happy to try to answer them for you.
Wendy, do we have anything from DOT that substantiates that discussion?
Just the applicants said that he thought that they had provided the discourse, on the communications by email. I have not personally seen them, but I would think that if we don't have them, we will get them.
Okay.
But I have not seen them directly.
Okay. And this is a little bit kind of a new scale type project for that area. Really could potentially change the look. Can you educate us a little bit about the steps along the way where we will still interface with what's happening out here?
In the event that there are changes, major changes to the plans, I mean, what you see is really what's being planned, what the actual site and development plan review, that'll go before, it'll come back before you if there are changes that are going to be different than this and their current phase. But when they come back for the future phase, they have to come back through for site and development plan, and if they have to amend their special exception, if they were to do anything different that's already than what's already allowed by the special exception, they would have to amend that special exception.
Okay.
So that will address some of that. Does that help answer or not?
Yes, but does the board have any
I
questions?
do. I just want
Commissioner
to
Glanzer?
thank you, Commissioner Marden. I just want to make a comment regarding that. It seems to me that it's not too dissimilar from what DCC has. It was agricultural. It was about the same size, and on a highway. I mean, I don't really see the difference. Is there something I'm missing that we should worry about the surroundings? I mean, it's ag and it's on a highway. And
No, I mean,
I'm
from a
missing that
staff
part.
perspective, from professional planning, that's it's a large piece of property. It's agriculture in nature. It's typical as provided by our code to have houses of worship on agriculture property, and we're talking about 1.5 acres out of the entire 21 plus acre site right now that they're dealing with. So,
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Do you know how far away the sewer and water lines are from the property?
I can't say, is it half mile? I
So
know that was
they're
not
pretty
close
close
enough,
already, aren't
because it's near.
For clarity, the sewer is much closer. Champions Park is served by sewer, although it is divided by the state highway and the railroad track, so access to the sewer at Champions Park may be somewhat close. It's no simple feat. And then the closest water is the southern boundary of Countryway Town Center that is being developed by Norfleet Construction. It's a little further away.
Commissioner Hersom?
Wendy, just to follow up on that, and at the aerial map, there's residential use indicated on 6 lots north of the DeVie Temple property. Would they also be compelled to hook up to city water and wastewater should it get within 800 feet?
I'll let the manager answer.
Current practices is that is not the city's current practice to compel, especially residential connections at 800 feet. Typically, what are the typical municipal standard is once you have water or sewer touching your property, adjacent to your property, then there's connection in time certain. 12 months, 36 months, something like that. And usually what I see put in practice is when your well fails or your septic tank fails, because people just object to the cost for connection fees. But a single residential lot being compelled to connect within 800 feet is not in our current regulations, nor am I aware of it being regulated anywhere else.
So, but if we get 800 feet, within 800 feet of this property, will that be touching some of those residential properties then?
Well, anybody the water will be coming from the north.
Sure.
So if water gets within 800 feet, Devi Temple will be compelled to extend and make the connection.
But the
and then if it crosses in front of anybody's property, then would they be compelled? I guess a similar example would be the city completed a water main east on State Road 26 recently, went right by the Davis property, and there's been no discussion about connecting the Davis property. I think when it eventually develops, that's when those connections would be made.
Okay, thank you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Farnsworth.
I'm not sure that's entirely true. I don't know whether the city attorney has any insight on that or not. But it's my understanding that if the Marden sewer are to the property, they are compelled to connect.
Well, actually, Thursday I met with Jamie, and we're looking at some exceptions to include if it's not commercially feasible to connect to the sewer system or the water system. that we would allow for some exemptions. For instance, Jamie used the example and maybe the Davis property would be a good example of this, is that there's a 40-acre tract and the house sits in the very back of the tract. Administratively, they've determined that house should not have to pay the extension to connect sewer or water. So there's some precedent for that, at least under the current administration. What you're thinking about, Monty, is that there is covenants whenever we've borrowed money from USDA for the implementation of the sewer system. And in those days, we had a 200-foot connection requirement, so that if your lot was, and it was dedicated by USDA covenants, that you had to connect to the sewer system if you came within a certain number of feet. I think it was 200 feet on the sewer system back in those days. And so I can look at that and see if there's additional or what our regulations are now, but I know back in those days it was the 200-foot number.
Yeah, I know. I mean, pretty much everybody in the city in Newberry was
that's what it was.
compelled to
That's
do
right.
that
That's
at one
right.
time. Okay.
Any further discussion with staff at this point before we move back to the applicant for the opportunity of any rebuttal? Seeing none, Mr. Applicant, was there anything from the staff or this discussion that you felt compelled to rebut or anything at this point?
Mr. Chair, there was nothing that we need to rebut.
Okay. All right, and don't go too far, but is there anybody from the public wishing to comment? Come on up. Have a seat. Is this considered testimony as a public comment? Is it considered testimony?
Sworn in.
Okay. Let's swear her in just for the heck of it.
Please state your name. Jamie Docker. You swear or testimony that you give some you have
Okay. Ma'am, you have an opportunity to question the applicant, which is yourself, but the staff as well. So
Yeah, my
you have the
question
floor.
is-
You have 5 minutes.
My person is just a little different. I don't know, I'm a public or a part of the board, but I'm not a board member.
We're flexible.
But I am part of the Devi Temple from day one.
Yes, ma'am.
So, first of all, I want to thank all of you for giving us this opportunity. The very first time when we came to Newberry for the first meeting, our commissioner and Mr. Mayor and a lot of staff members gave us a very warm welcome, and we can never forget that. That was really, we felt like that is a good sign too, and I believe in all those. And now the land is there, and I heard that there were some concerns from the citizens, what will happen if the temple comes here or not. I can understand anything unknown is scary. And we have gone through this, my husband and I have gone through this, 2 temples in Tampa. People there, they had the same fears. What will happen? There will be a traffic jam. There will be a noise pollution problem. And there will be problems, fighting and all that. But those are what we did is we went to those homes, all the neighbors, and told them what this is all about. And it will become more like a community, not against the community. Now the same people are helping us. They are looking forward to come to our get-together, and like the commissioner said, for the good food. And we feel like they are part of it. So we are sure in Newberry also the same thing is going to happen. But they have to see it what it is, and I can understand. So what we will do is we will go and talk to those neighbors. And any calls you get in the city concerning, please let us know so that we can go and talk to them and put their mind at ease. And everything is going well by God's grace. We are hoping for the best. Thank you so much.
How did you get to Newberry?
Good question.
The grace of God.
There you go. We are all from Gainesville, actually. So we were looking for a land. We did not want it in the middle of everything. We need some space if we had to expand anything. So we were looking, but we didn't want to go too far from Gainesville. because we have a lot of financial support from Gainesville.
Mhm.
So we wanted to see something where the temple can be. For us to go to a Hindu temple, we had to go all the way to Orlando or Jacksonville or Tampa. 2 hours, the whole day goes for us. So some of the citizens, we all decided we will have a small temple, not in Gainesville, but Ocala doesn't have a temple. So somewhere between Gainesville and Ocala. And we were looking and looking, Newberry, we stopped there. This is the place for us. Like you say, it's God's grace, that's all I can say. When we saw this area and the land, we all liked it. There was no opposition from anybody. Ever since, things are going very well. It's a struggle. Raising funds is not easy, we all know that. My husband and I, we have worked in other temples the same way. It took 16 years, 20 years. That's okay if we have positive mind.
Do you like baseball?
Support will come.
Do you like baseball?
Not so much.
You said no, they said yes.
Yeah, they may. Maybe
You better get
they
with
are.
your team over there.
Maybe they are. Yeah, that's a different team. But we agree on certain things.
Thank you.
No.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
like it. Thank you.
Oh, cricket. Sir, you have an opportunity to make any closing arguments. Can or cannot take the time, it doesn't
I
matter.
think she just made my closing arguments. I would just, I remember when they came to me, we looked at, half a dozen other sites at least and examined them in different locations from Ocala to Gainesville. And they came into the office after visiting this property and they said, this is it for us. And they said something about this place. They really liked Newberry, they liked the property. It just felt right for them. And so here we are. It's been a longer road than you might imagine, but we've worked together, and it's been great getting to know these folks, and I just really think it will be great for the city of Newberry. I believe that, and I think you guys will enjoy them in this community, and I hope you will approve us this evening, and they can start moving forward. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Well, we will do our thing, so everybody stand by. Anybody else on the board have any other further comments or questions? Chair recognizes Commissioner Farnsworth.
Should we wait on the DOT report, or is it okay to go ahead and approve this now?
Mr. Mayor, I'll kind of harken back to my days as a public works and utility guy. I found that their connection to the state road is imperative for them to do what they do. They can make all these site improvements on their property. If DOT denies them the right to connect to the state road or connect with the conditions, it'll be at their risk. So just like I'm comfortable with the state of Florida Department of Health will issue the septic tanks once they determine that that site can withstand the waste loading from a septic tank, and that the Water Management District will issue a well permit because they believe that it can withstand it. I think DOT will say these are the conditions, maybe turn lanes, maybe not, but DOT's traffic engineers will do that. So I've always felt comfortable recommending approval without those, but as a condition that you obtain the permit that is required and that you comply with the conditions of FDOT's permit.
If I'm not mistaken, Matt, you might be able to correct me. I believe DCC's property is actually only 20 acres. Do you remember?
40. I mean, that block is, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's 40.
Okay. The original was 40. Okay, we had split it.
So I think it's only 20. I can understand some concerns about something new. I do not have any experience really with the Hindu religion, or it's not technically a religion, but a way of being. Myself, I'm kind of interested in learning. I said probably a year ago, kind of a motto that came into my head, that great things grow in Newberry, and I think that could probably potentially apply to this effort as well. I'm in favor of it. I don't see anything else that gives me really a lot of heartburn. I think, as Wendy stated, we do have a couple of bites at the apple here, moving along with a couple of the items on the site plan, etc. But does anybody else have any further comments or anything? Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Hersom? Mr. Farnsworth? All right. And would anybody like to offer a motion passing in favor of Resolution 2018-43?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application by the Baby Temple 2018-44.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
And to pass the resolution as well as encompassed in it.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, pardon me. We have a motion by Commissioner Glanzer. We have a second by Commissioner Hersom. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say no. Okay. Roll call, please. Commissioner Coleman?
No.
Commissioner Hersom?
Yes.
Commissioner Farnsworth? I vote in the affirmative.
Yes.
Commissioner Glanzer? The vote is 4-1 in favor. The exception is granted. And looking back over the agenda, there is no other items before this board. Seeing none from the public, I hereby adjourn the meeting.